morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Today's show is focused on the 45th Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes. In August of 2018, he won the Democratic primary in a landslide and became the running mate of Democratic gubernatorial nominee Tony Evers. Evers and Barnes went on to win the November 2018 election, defeating incumbent Republicans Scott Walker and Rebecca Clayfish. It is a pleasure to welcome Wisconsin's Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes back to Our Issues Milwaukee. Hi.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks so much for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. Now, the last time you were here, you were actually campaigning for Lieutenant Governor. So now that it's all over, said and done, tell me how you feel.
Yeah, things have changed since the last time we were here. It's a wonderful feeling. It was exciting for us to win the race, and it's as exciting being in office. From inauguration until today, no days have truly been alike. Having an exciting time traveling the state, getting to tour some really interesting places, be it farms, be it new businesses, healthcare facilities, all in the name of moving the state forward. So it is a lot of work. We have a lot of cleanup to do, and we're just getting started.
Okay, so during this first segment, I really want us to focus on your personal life and all the things that you've gone through to lead you to where you are today. And so first, you were born and raised in Milwaukee.
Yes.
You graduated from John Marshall High School. And a lot of people don't know, but you graduated when you were just 16 years old.
I was 16 years old when I graduated high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. So did you ever know early on that you wanted to go into politics?
That's the thing, you never really know. The idea was there, thinking about whether it's different TV shows that I watched, growing up, having to go with my dad to every election, having to go with him to vote, getting a sample ballot, learning the names of people who were running for office. But I guess the spark was probably in college, and I tell people all the time, there was nothing more integral to getting me on this path in the 2004 DNC speech that then State Senator Barack Obama gave. For the first time, I was able to see somebody, and not even just as another African-American male, but as an American, like as someone who had a vision to lead this country, to move us forward. And it was the sort of energy that you wanted in a presidential candidate, although he was only a state senator running for U.S. Senate at that point, totally overshadowed our nominee for president at the time. So that was very exciting for me. After college, I ended up going to work on a campaign as an organizer. I came back to Milwaukee in 2009. And then worked in a couple of offices and found my way into my own elected office in 2012.
And the rest, as they say,
the rest is history. The rest is history.
Doubt. I mean, literally it is. And so I'm guessing when we look at really your upbringing, you have a mother that was a school teacher.
Yep.
Your father actually worked with United Auto Workers.
Yep.
He was a member of the UAW.
Still is a member.
Still a member.
Worked on the assembly line.
Wow.
Putting together catalytic converters.
Wow. So you talk about the role your parents played in who you are today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was the example that they set. It was their involvement. My mother was very active in her union as well, which sort of was another piece, was another critical component to my own engagement. Knowing those people, knowing the people that they worked with, knowing what they stood for, knowing the issues that they took on and the importance to the broader community is what got me on the path. And learning the values not just of hard work, but how hard-working people should be valued for the work that they do and their contributions to society is what got me on this track. And understanding that there is an extreme imbalance that exists between working people, ultra wealthy people, who grew up in the same neighborhood that I grew up in, without access to healthcare, without access to good paying jobs, and oftentimes being a part of an education system that isn't funded as it should be, and seeing people left behind, many of my own peers, attending schools that are under-resourced, crowded classrooms, other issues that continue to be ignored is sort of what has inspired me to run for office.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later down the road, but you did mention going off to college and then making your way back to Milwaukee. So you're a graduate of Alabama A&M.
Went to Alabama A&M.
Which is an HBCU.
HBCU.
And I, too, am a graduate of HBCU. I went to Central State University in Ohio. So I think it's important, especially for those young people who are out there watching, because there are a lot of great folks that come out of HBCUs. Talk about the role and the influence that Alabama A&M had on helping shape who you are today.
Well, absolutely. And people oftentimes ask, are HBCUs still relevant today? I say they're more relevant today than maybe ever before, because you look at negative statistics in communities of color, particularly Black community, where they talk about education, educational access, educational attainment, and you look at where these schools are, where they're located. I mean, even in the South, like, it doesn't really matter where you go. Students in high school know somebody that's going to college, know someone that's been to college, know somebody who's graduated college. It's not always the same, especially in Midwestern cities, Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit. It's a part of the culture. It's totally ingrained in the structure of society, going to college. And college isn't for everybody. I understand that totally. There are many opportunities in the trades, many opportunities at technical colleges as well. But from a standpoint purely based on what people have as options, what people see as options, or what people see as possible, makes HBCUs so much more relevant than people give them credit for. And being in that space, being with people who look like me, who were very mission driven, inspired me to go on and do more and want more.
And I always like to make sure we explain when talking about HBCUs, because sometimes people think that they're saying it's only for students of color, but of course they were established during a time where students of color were not allowed at other schools, so they've kept that historically Black college and university tag to remind you that really this is where we started. And it's amazing that all these years later that they are still producing outstanding students who go on to do great things. Yeah,
these are institutions that were born out of struggle, that breed leaders.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. And I mean, with that said, you are Wisconsin's first African-American lieutenant governor, and that's a pretty big deal. I don't know if it's sunk in for you or not, but talk about, what that means for you.
It's starting to, it sinks in day by day. It's truly, it's an honor, right? Like, it's, I do think about it. I think about what that actually means and the responsibility that comes with that. And that's why I try to spend a lot of time, visiting students, talking with children who, may possibly benefit from, the kind of experience, who may not have seen something like this for themselves. Want to let them know that it's possible. Because so many people wouldn't particularly pursue a path like this because they didn't think it was possible. They didn't see themselves reflected in the work. So you have that. Then you also have, the responsibility of making sure that the voices that have been ignored, people who've been, left behind, making sure that that voice is represented, making sure the experiences that I had are truly reflected in the work that we're doing. And having been a student in Milwaukee Public Schools, having had friends who have fallen victim to the criminal justice system, friends who've been victims to gun violence, knowing their stories, I have a responsibility to share those in the hopes of advancing the cause of everyone. But for so long, that perspective has been missing. People who can't say that they know somebody who's, been to jail before for nonviolent or whatever type of offense, not knowing someone who's ever really truly lived in poverty and had to survive on government benefits. So that's the perspective I hope to bring, and those are the voices that I hope to be a champion of, because we can't continue to leave people behind as a society. We've done that for far too long, and everybody suffers as a result.
I agree with you completely. Now, you're only Correct me if I'm wrong. 32.
I am 32 years old.
32 years old. A lot of people watching us say, he's a baby. But I wonder if you've given it thought on, when it's all over said and done, your career as a politician, as someone who works for change and shaping the law, what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, so specifically to Wisconsin, I hope that we become a state that offers opportunity to people, that we become a state that decides that we aren't one that will leave people behind, and in turn we will be an example for the rest of this nation to provide opportunity, fairness, justice, equality, equity for all people. That's that it's not about what I want to do, it's about what we have to do as a state. It's about what we need to do as a society. It's the direction that this nation needs to move in, especially you look at the period of inequality that we're in right now, be it income, be it educational achievement, be it disparities in healthcare. We have to work together, and we have to come up with solutions to advance, again, not just the state of Wisconsin, but especially the state of Wisconsin, but the entire country.
Yeah, be a blueprint is what you're saying.
And we have an opportunity to be a blueprint. We were that before. We have rich, proud, progressive traditions here in the state of Wisconsin. You look at 108 years ago, or even just 100 years ago.
Just 100.
We were the first state to ratify the 19th Amendment. They gave women the right to vote. We were the first state to declare the Fugitive Slave Act unconstitutional. We were the first in so many positive regards, and we've gotten away from that. This is a moment where we can get back to that place and become a leader and become a national model.
I love it. And there are many people who admittedly don't know what the job lieutenant governor entails. I'm sure people ask you all the time. But
all the time.
It's pretty clear that it doesn't come with its own manual, and it's pretty clear that you work closely with Governor Evers. But if you would I think you gave us an idea early on in the conversation of some of the things that you've done as far as traveling the state and really getting an idea of what needs to be done, statewide. But give us an idea of your day-to-day activities.
Well, the role is very flexible. There are so many different ways that one could serve as lieutenant governor. It's been done differently by everyone. I'm hoping to redefine the role myself. And a lot of that is dictated or predicated upon the relationship of the governor and lieutenant governor. I have a solid, really good working relationship with Governor Evers, and I personally want to see us advance the state that embraces the science that exists, and I want us to become a state that is on the forefront, on the cutting edge of reducing the impacts of climate change. That means investing in renewable energy. That means creating jobs. That means protecting our environment. We have vast natural resources in the state of Wisconsin that are the envy of the region, if not the envy of the entire nation. One, we have to protect them. Two, we have to advance the cause and use what we have as far as brain power to further us in innovation and research and developing new technologies for Wisconsin, like I said, to be that place, to be that leader once again. And I do want to make sure that we are an administration that represents everybody, that does not leave people behind, an administration that, again, is focused on equity, is focusing on lifting everyone in this state up.
Yeah, and so not long ago, I noticed on Twitter that you were hanging it was a solar panel.
Yeah.
And then you were in Green Bay and you were planting trees.
Yeah.
So really, you have an opportunity to learn a lot about how things work, probably a lot of the great products that are produced right here in our state. And
not just the beer.
Not just the beer, not just cheese, but it goes beyond that, of course. So social media really does serve a purpose that it never has, before in, thinking about probably 25 years ago, people didn't have, you didn't have the opportunity to connect with so many people, not just in the state of Wisconsin, but beyond, globally.
Yeah.
And you said early on, if I remember correctly, that you were willing to be an ambassador for millennials in Wisconsin politics. So you being, right in the middle of a part of technology and social media and all those things. How does it work for you in being able to communicate what it is you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and the thing about being able to communicate what we're trying to accomplish, it goes back to just being yourself.
Yeah.
Just doing the things that you would do anyway, just from a different position, having a different vantage point, and having actual, relationships for so long, people my age, and this is one of the things I get happy to lump myself in with the 18 to 35-year-old demographic. But we aren't the most reliable voting bloc, and that's for a number of reasons, and it's partly because, neither we don't feel served by either party. We don't see things advancing as they should. We don't feel connected to our elected officials. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to run for office, because I didn't think that connection was there or as effective as it could be. If we're going to represent all people, we should represent all people. And, everybody of voting age isn't involved in politics. And so deciding to, run for office and being a representative of my age group, of millennials, I hope that we will have more of a say-so, at least have that seat at the table, because so many decisions are being made without us. Decisions that impact our future, decisions that impact our job prospects, decisions that affect our quality of life. Especially, again, we can go back to the environmental issue all the time, because what is this planet going to look like in the next 10, 15, 20 years, given the science that's out? And we have to do something about it. And so many people have chosen to disregard it. And that's why you see younger people stepping up to run for office. I'm the youngest Democrat elected statewide, but the fact is there are more and more people, younger people, who are saying that this is my time. And I'm happy to be a part of it. I can't take credit for everything at all by any means, but I'm happy to be a part of a much larger movement to make sure that the whole of this country is being represented in the decisions that are being made.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break.
All right.
And thank you so much for just sharing all those things to give people a better understanding of who you are. And like I said, how it has brought you to where you are today. So we're going to take a break and then come back and talk about some specific issues.
All right, let's do it.
All right. When we return to Our Issues Milwaukee, we'll continue our conversation with Wisconsin's Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. We'll discuss education, healthcare, and even the DNC that's coming to Milwaukee in 2020. We'll do that right after this.